Today, let's take a look at atoms and molecules, specifically identifying their scale, proportion, and properties. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, what is matter? Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space, meaning it has mass and volume. Matter is everything in the universe except energy. Matter can be living and non-living, and all matter is made of atoms at the smallest level. Atoms are the same as elements. So if you've heard someone describe elements, we're also talking about atoms, same thing. They are pure substances of one type of atom that can't be broken down into different substances. So it's just like a pure substance is known as an element. There are only 92 naturally occurring elements on the periodic table. Examples could be iron, zinc, or gold. Taking a look at the basic atomic structure, it's very important that you know where things are located as we talk about the sizing of atoms and comparing them to others. Inside the center of the atom, you'll find the protons and the neutrons of the atom. And then circling around the nucleus in orbits or shells are electrons. So there's a compact nucleus and then a cloud or shelled orbits of electrons spinning around that nucleus. One way that helps me visualize an atom, because they are invisible to the human eye, is a ceiling fan. So if we imagine that here's the nucleus, and that's where the protons and neutrons are located, and here are the electrons. However, like a ceiling fan, when it's in motion, when it starts going around and around and around and around and around and around super fast, you can't really tell where the blades are, right? It starts to kind of meld together. That motion creates almost like a cloud of the fan blades, and you can't really tell at any given point which fan blade is where, because it just kind of looks like a big kind of circular cloud. And that's exactly how electrons are. They're moving around and around and around in a circle so fast that at any given time you can't pinpoint where the electron is. It's in what we call a cloud. So they're zooming around the nucleus to form a cloud. Most of the atom is empty space because it's moving around, and we can't really always say exactly at any given point where an atom is. It's just within that cloud circling around the nucleus. There's a lot of empty space inside an atom. And what's keeping those electrons from flying off is their attraction to the protons in the nucleus. But still, there's a lot of energy happening for the atom as a whole, as well as the electrons. Taking a look really quick at these particles, the neutron is going to be neutral. It's found in the nucleus, and it's about 1 atomic mass unit, which is extremely small, but compared to an electron is quite sizable. The proton has a positive charge. It's also found in the nucleus, and also about the same size as a neutron. If we look at electron, they are negative. We find them in that cloud, or the orbiting, right? That kind of hazy circular orbit around the nucleus, and they are 0.0001 atomic mass units, so very small compared to a proton and a neutron. The periodic table, if you've heard of it or maybe seen it, it organizes the elements. So each of these are elements, but remember, elements and atoms, they're interchangeable. So it's going to give us some information about the elements, the atoms, and how many protons we find in each element. This is an excellent image showing the size of atoms that we find in the periodic table. So as we start, here's hydrogen. It has 1 electron and 1 proton. So it's our smallest atom. If we look down here at cesium, it's ginormous. As we go across the periodic table, we add protons and electrons. So each of these atoms has one more proton and one more electron than the one before. So lithium has 3 protons and 3 electrons. Beryllium has 4 electrons and 4 protons. Neon has 10. Okay, so it's pretty cool to see, if we're talking about scale and proportion, the size of atoms. As we go down, our atoms are going to get larger. Why? Because we're adding more protons and electrons. But as we go across, what do we notice? They actually get more condensed. Now, why is that? Why is we're adding protons and electrons, each one has one more than the previous, would it get smaller? And that's when the importance of the charge comes in. Electrons are negatively charged and protons are positively charged. So that attraction is so strong that as we add more electrons and more protons, instead of getting bigger and bigger, they get condensed because that charge is pulling those electrons, pulling them close to the nucleus. It's pretty interesting how that charge makes more of an effect on their size than how many are there. Pretty neat. So what makes each atom different? As we saw in the picture before, each atom has a different number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And the number of protons is really what makes each atom unique. As we add a proton, we're going to add an electron, but it's going to make that size of the atom different. It's going to make the properties of that atom different. It all starts with how many protons or positive charged particles are inside that atom. Let's take a little bit deeper look at molecules now. Molecules are combinations of atoms to make a new substance. Molecules can be solids, liquids, or gases. Examples can be water, hydrogen peroxide, sodium chloride, glucose, or sugar. So water, H2O, hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, sodium chloride, table salt is NaCl, and C6H12O6, is glucose or sugar. So each of these letters represents an atom, and as we combine those atoms, we can make new substances. Here's a great image showing the scale of atoms and molecules, and I'm going to start with what's visible to the human eye. So here's human hair, then a little bit smaller, that is bacteria and animal cells, and we're going to need a microscope to be able to see these here. Chromosomes, where genetic material or information is collected. Genes, okay, which is like this tiny part of a chromosome. As we start to get smaller, there's viruses, ribosomes, and proteins. Those are both types of proteins. Ribosomes is an organelle. Here we go is DNA. As it starts to unwind and unwind, here is the molecule of DNA, extremely small molecule like water or carbon dioxide, and then here are atoms. So if you can just see how much magnification would be needed to see an atom or a molecule compared to human hair. That's a pretty strong microscope. You can also look in comparison to like for a transistor, for example, which is what kind of makes up motherboards of cell phones and computers, where electricity and signals can move quite quickly, extremely small. And here's our carbon nanotubes, which are kind of great new technology. Still, atoms and small molecules are going to be even smaller than a nanotube. Looking at nanotubes, talking about carbon, so each of these little dots are little carbon atoms. And carbon is so cool that it can make all these different structures in its molecules. So it can have these chains, it can lay flat, another type of kind of like a square chain. You see how they all kind of make a square? Here they can make almost like a soccer ball of different orientations, kind of like these circular structures with hexagons or pentagons or octagons of all these little carbon atoms joining together with other atoms like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. It can kind of be like a scattered glump even, or a nanotube like what I was referring to, where they kind of make this cool cylinder. So the carbon atom mixed with other atoms can make different structures. So it's not just like they're different sizes, but also there can be these different structures that are made as we form molecules. And here is looking again at different sizes of molecules. So for example, hydrogen gas has 2 little hydrogen molecules. Look at, for example, hydrogen gas compared to hydrogen sulfide, which in certain combinations can be a deadly acid. Water, a lot bigger than hydrogen gas. But if we look at chlorine gas, which can be combined with sodium to make salt, that's a lot larger. Or iodine. Methane gas, quite small, and there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens and a carbon. So 5 total atoms is still smaller than 2 atoms of iodine. So you can see there's a lot of different sizes of molecules depending on which atoms we're using and the amount of space that individual atom takes up as it combines and is adhered to other atoms. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and look forward to seeing what you produce in your Learn activity. Thank you. Take care.